Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super-Fanta-Fi. This being a show where it's about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the series premiere of Debris. A great series premiere, a lot of really interesting things. Really quickly, start off at the top. It's actually interesting. The creator of the show, I think it was J.H. Wyman. I just read a little bit on his Wikipedia article when I was watching the episode, and it turns out he was like, one of the things he's known for is like being an executive producer, writer, and showrunner for Fringe. I don't know how much of the show he show ran, and how much he wrote for the show. But I thought that was interesting because now in retrospect, it's like, okay, so you can definitely see some Fringe elements to this because I'm like, yeah, I guess like he took some of the stuff, like some of his experience from Fringe and kind of translated it over to this, which is, like I said, just you can now in retrospect knowing that I'm like, yeah, I can definitely see some commonality between this and Fringe in certain regards. And but what I thought was so interesting is the fact is I thought we were going to have like, oh, the debris falling down and we start there. It's like, no, the debris, we go further back than that. 3 years ago, scientists noticed that there's freaking alien spaceship wreckage out there in the atmosphere. Oh, and over the past 6 months now, it's been falling on Earth. So I like that we literally jump in the middle of this story where it's not like, that's so interesting. Maybe later on down the road, they're going to like circle back to that because I think that'll probably be part of the story. But I'm surprised you didn't start at the very, very beginning. But I guess that the debris part is what's kind of most important. But even then, I'm surprised you're not starting at the beginning. But I guess it makes sense too because it's like we're going to slowly catch up on like figuring out what this all means. Like because it seems like every piece of debris is different because there's even different. They're like, oh yeah, this color debris piece was a darker color. So it's like obviously they vary in color and what they are able to do. It makes you wonder why they're able because they're all pieces of a spaceship, not less. You know, there were other things besides the spaceship that these pieces of debris are from. Like maybe there's equipment that was on the ship. But because I wasn't sure if they were going to go down the alien route. But they're straight up like, no, this is from an alien spaceship. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I guess I figured like maybe there'd just be some mystery of what this debris is. Not realizing they'd immediately be like, oh, no, this is alien stuff. Why it's here on Earth. Because even Finola is kind of like, maybe there's a reason why it all came to us. Like, it's like there are so many planets that this debris could have fallen to. Like, that ship could have... Maybe where the ship is, there were many different planets the debris would have had to pass to land here on Earth is kind of what it might have been insinuating. Because it might not be directly, like, the ship might not be directly above Earth. It might be somewhere in space that we can see far enough out to see it. But the debris passes a whole bunch of other planets and ends up hitting Earth. So maybe that's why for her, it's like, it's even more improbable considering the size of space and it just happens to land here. Maybe this is, I don't know. Because it makes you wonder, like, was the ship abandoned? Are there any of those aliens on Earth trying to retrieve the pieces to that, which that might end up being the thing. Like, they could be walking amongst humans. We might be dealing with kind of, making a Marvel comparison, maybe we're dealing with something kind of similar to the Skrulls, where, like, they can either possess humans or maybe, more specifically, like the Skrulls, can shapeshift into humans, So maybe they're here trying to collect the pieces of their ship, trying to bounce. Makes you wonder, like, could it have been a thing of they're actually here, alien invasion style, like they were coming to the planet, but something went wrong? So many questions. Whether we'll get answers in full, how long it'll be before we get, But slowly but surely, it's about, like, interestingly enough, I wasn't expecting this. Like, I figured one particular government agency, didn't realize it was going to be two. It's MI6 and the CIA working together. It's like, yeah, each one is kind of looking out for their own self-interest, but it's like, as, trying to be, build this bridge of cooperation, we're kind of in this together. So, like, Orbital is, like, I think the joint operations name, but obviously it's comprised of MI6 and CIA. So it's like, don't let the world know, because only a select few, probably like top agencies are aware of what's going down, because Finola talks about the fact that her father is an astrophysicist and he's one of the first people that they let know, like, hey, there's an alien spaceship up there, you got to see it and everything. But so because the big question is, like, what is each one of them getting out of this? It turns out Brian has, like, experience that he was in Afghanistan, but was kind of, I think they were saying, like, he was held prisoner there, but he kind of got, rescued and pulled out. So it's like he must be some. I don't know what, because she said the line of, like, he must, or rather, Finola's boss was kind of like, he must be something special. I guess I guess it's because like going above and beyond to rescue him. Maybe there's something deeper there between him and Maddox. Really quickly, I should also note I thought was interesting the actress who plays like I think is that her name Ferris? I think that's her boss. It's one of the Kryptonians from season 3 of Supergirl that were trying to that the whole rain situation. That was one of the Kryptonians that was behind it. I was like, oh, that's cool. Nevertheless. God, wow. Also, I was about to say, it's also interesting to see Jonathan Tucker. I'm glad to see him like it more so because I've been seeing him like pop up more. I mean, maybe there's a lot of stuff he's been in. I'm not like the thing I'll always go back to is like, what was that? Damn it! It's like 100 Girls or something like that. I think that's the first thing I ever saw him in. I believe that's the movie. I don't remember because he's trying to find like one particular girl. It's kind of like a rom-com dramedy movie from like ever ago. I think that's the first thing I ever saw him in. Regardless, I'm going on a huge tangent. It's beside the point. But it was just interesting that line about like, oh, like he must be something special for them to kind of go above and beyond to save him. I thought that would have just been kind of a natural thing, but I guess like maybe they went much further and beyond just to save him. Like obviously there's still a lot about Brian. Obviously he's not beginning to talking about himself, so he's still kind of it seems like he's a bit of an enigma to Finola because she's the one we got to know a little bit more about. Obviously learning about her dad, which she's saying like my name isn't the reason why I got this job, and he was like, I believe you, because it's the conversation about why each one of them is there. And obviously like we kind of heard Brian's reasons in the trailer where it's like, I just want to make sure that the bad guys, that it's the good guys that gets their hand on this technology and not someone else. Because it's like, hey, because for Nola, it's like this could, change the world. This could, change humanity. And in Brian's perspective and in the wrong hands, it could end humanity. So kind of showing you on what side of the scales and from their particular backgrounds. I think because of Finola's on the more science side of things, she looks at the wonder and the grand things that this could do for their world and humanity, whereas because of him, I think because of probably his military experience and just kind of seeing probably like the darker side of humanity, kind of he has a pessimistic side of being like, wrong hands get this, like it's like humans on their own levels and where we are right now can be terrible and shitty. And so I think for him it's like giving them the access to technology, whatever this thing is that can accomplish so much. I think it can be a very bad thing too, but like I said, just their different perspectives on this, and I think that's going to be like the particular oddball team that they make, just their different perspectives and backgrounds on it. But obviously, because what initially started this was like there was a deal going down. Which, side note, one of the people involved with the deal, I'm blanking on his name. I know his name. It's like Michael something. I'm blanking on his last name. But the thing I know him best for is like Bobo from Winona Earp. Like, hey, it's Bobo. That's crazy. But they were making a deal about these pieces because, like, I thought was really interesting the moment, like, they turn a corner and he's running after them, but then they disappear. So I was like, whoa. Do you guys, like, are you guys using the debris yourselves? That's what I was wondering. We kind of get answers to that later on because we see that, like, they're popping, like, pills or something and they have, like, and they're able to teleport. Granted, it's not a surefire thing because I guess it's like you got to be very precise. Like, I wonder how does that whole thing work? Like, do you have to picture where you're going in your mind when you teleport, or is it like predetermined location, like inside whatever? Like I said, I think it was a pill, but whatever they took, like, is it a destined location? Whatever the case may be, one of them got teleported into like a pillar. So it almost looked like they weren't too shocked by that, being like, whoa. But it's also at the same time it looked like they were shocked by it. So it's like, so are they using alien technology? Like that's why I'm like, are they humans or are they aliens in disguise trying to get the pieces back? I don't know. They have that type of technology that no one else necessarily has, because it's almost like, how are you able to do that? Because I was thinking that they had pieces of the debris and it gave them powers. Like maybe it kind of it manifests itself differently or something. I think all the pieces probably have relatively the same thing, but maybe certain aspects. Maybe like each piece of the ship can do different, like they all do the same thing, but maybe under different conditions, it activates certain aspects about what these pieces of debris can do, or maybe it is just a thing that each piece can do. Because it seems like they kind of are on the same plane of like what they can do, but they still do very different things. Like the one that teleported that lady down like that was phasing. We can see that they can teleport. It can also like mess with gravity, but like I said, maybe that all on a scientific level, maybe that still all is in the same wheelhouse, but you probably have to dissect it even more, being like, yeah, it's all under the same wheelhouse, but then you have to specify like this particular effect, maybe, like I said, I don't know. First episode, it's going to leave you with a lot of damn questions, and I'm curious like whether or not they're going to get into nitty gritty of like specific details and questions like that. But so I'm wondering about that. But then also just thinking like maybe they're able to like synthesize pills, like maybe they take like shavings of like the debris and they put them in pills so that you can use some of the power. I don't know. It just seems interesting that you have like this advanced technology and powers, and at the same time you have the debris. So it's like there has to be a correlation there. Like whether they're like consuming the debris and that's doing that, I don't know. It's just an interesting situation. But obviously what kind of jumpstart the mystery even more, besides the deal of like, okay, we're trying to get as many of the pieces of the debris, is also there's this boy who's driving with his mom, and all of a sudden his mom like starts bleeding from her eye. I was kind of like, all right, this kid's kind of creepy because he's not reacting or something, and I was like, what's going on? And he knows to like open the door, and he's letting her body float, and I'm like, what I didn't understand like what that was about. I was like, is that him? I thought at first I was like, maybe he's trying to help his mom. No. And then later on when they show up and like they're bringing up the fact it's like, because later on they found her body in the field, and it's like, maybe the wind blew her this way, but it's like, no, the wind's blowing the other way. So her body eventually, like, they kind of unsnag it, and she like ends up floating to this other, like this spiraling where some event is kind of happening, and there's other bodies as well. But it turns out like all the other bodies are like that, no gravity. But then like while like Sharon is examining him, Amy's eyes open. I'm like, that's creepy as hell. But it's like, but apparently they're still alive. They're just in a state where they can't move, so they can't really communicate either. But they are conscious and aware, and it's like, that's super bad. Like, no way to really tell people, I'm in here, I'm like, help me, like, you can't say or do anything. But what also interested me was like, nothing's come up about her son, and then later on I'm like, we're still not getting anything about her having a kid, and then later on we find out she doesn't have a son. I'm like, she doesn't have a son. I'm like, who the hell is that kid? And I was like, once again, my brain immediately was like, he's an alien. He's an alien in disguise or something like that, which I guess technically isn't too far off while also still being far off, because it was interesting to find out that basically that's this other person that's kind of involved in this what is her name? Mary, I believe. She has a husband, a daughter, and a son, and the boy's name is Kieran. But his sister Isla is like, what are you talking about? My brother died like 7 months ago in a car accident. And you're like, what? This thing brings back the dead. But even like, because even Brian was like, what did it do? Like, pick his bones up out of the ground and add flesh to it. But then you had Finola be like, no, like he was cremated. So it's like, so why did this thing particularly take her form? Because Brian and Finola nearby found like a large chunk of the debris. What was interesting though is that Brian was talking about the fact is that there has been another piece that big before, and it basically evaporated a large river in the Ozark. So showing you what these things are capable of. But it's like we end up finding out because Finola ends up getting close to it, and it ends up triggering. It was kind of pulling on the memories of her mom, and she was like, it almost kind of brought it to the surface, almost like it was reaching in, kind of grabbing it. And now it kind of starts adding more context to everything that's going down. That the Kieran it made was because they find out from Isla that her mom has been grief-stricken ever since. Like, it's not, no parent will be able to get over that. And so she's been drowning in that grief, and it seems like that debris resonated with it, and it basically brought her son back. It basically pulled the memory of her son and made a construct of him. But it turns out to sustain itself, it needs to basically feed on people. So that's why it keeps repeating this cycle of like, oh, hey, mom, tells the story over and over again about the circus thing. But I think the reason why is because for her, the last memory she had of her son before they were having that accident was that very conversation. So it's kind of stuck in this cycle. It kind of reminds me of that "Are You My Mommy" from Doctor Who. It's kind of similar in that vein, but it seems like it's basically repeating the last memory that the mother had of like being with Kieran, and I think that's what it's kind of stuck in this loop, and it's playing that loop over and over again while also feeding on the life force of everyone that it gets to be its mom. Is that it's disturbing and creepy, really interesting. But what was also interesting too, like when Isla's kind of breaking down, like, because, Brian's asking, like, why are you in a boarding school so close to home? Like, if you were going to go to a boarding school, wouldn't it be the point to be far away? Why are you so close? Because her and her mom, like, were not in a good place. Like, she's like, me and my mom have been fighting, like, a lot. And it was kind of a situation of, I figured it would be a good idea to be away from home for a little while. She didn't want to go too far away, but just needed to get out of the house. Because for her, she kind of blamed her mom, because it's like, my brother would still be alive if you didn't want to go to that if you didn't go out that night, if you didn't take him to the gas station, to get him candy or whatever. And it's like, that drunk driver would have never hit. So it's just a lot. They're both sad and heartbroken, and it's just, that can lead to lashing out. But what was interesting, though, is like Brian's reaction to it. And, Finola talking, connecting with Isla, being like, she lost her mom 2 years ago to cancer, and her dad couldn't get over it, and he died sometime later. But it seemed like Brian ends up talking about it where it's like Isla reminded him of someone, and we kind of get more context to that later on when he's trying to get Isla to kind of connect with her mom. He's basically saying, like, you need to do this because you don't want to, like, have the biggest regret that you weren't able to kind of change things. So I think in a similar regard, like, him and probably, like, a parent of his, or maybe it's even a sibling for all we know, like, someone that was important to him, they never made up, and that person is gone, and they can never fix what was broken, and that's, I think, the biggest regret a lot of people have is, like, you always want to try and be on the best of terms with people because you never know how life is. You may never get a chance to make things right, which obviously is a lot easier said than done, but it does put things in perspective sometimes. Sometimes we fight and argue over the smallest things. Obviously, in their particular case, Isla and her mom, it was something big, but it's like, the thing is, it's just like I said, they were both sad and heartbroken, and it's just like, Isla had to tell her mom, it's like, we're in this together. Like, Kieran, he's not coming back, but we can still be here to remember how things were. That, basically, that they can get through this as a family because she needs her mom and dad. It's like, we have to get through this together, I just, and like, you could tell it was hitting Brian. He was like kind of trying to fight back, like the tears, because he talks about it later on that he likes the way Finola looks at him, in the sense that, like, you look at me like I'm a human, because for so long I think he had to shut that side of himself off, because it's like, I have a job to do, no putting human emotions in it, and it's like he's always kind of done a job that involved solitude and kind of being disconnected from people, but it seems like this whole experience is going to be about connecting and connections, because that's what ended up happening to all these people. They were basically being connected to all of this because it all derived from one mother's grief. And because in that moment, because later on, sadly, Finola ends up finding herself under the same circumstances, because she ends up being controlled by the boy and being taken to the place where he died. Like I said, it's like the events kind of playing over and over again. But and that, under that kind of spell, like, it was it was terrifying yet beautiful, because in this moment she could feel everything that Kieran's mom was able to feel. Like, to be able to connect on that level is beautiful, but it's also terrifying because it's just like being washed over by someone else's grief. Interesting timing too, because not really a spoiler, kind of a similar thing in WandaVision, actually. It's kind of interesting how that timing around that. But luckily, Isla was able to reach her mom, and it kind of, because all this was built around her grief, and that's what was like that was the crux of this. And the moment her mom kind of just like finally let go of Kieran, it made that version of him disappear. And that little event, it seemed like where Finola was being taken, it seemed like that event died down. So interesting stuff. But obviously things get complicated because just as Brian's kind of opening up to Finola, he gets a call from Maddox being like, yeah, so it turns out this organization might be bigger. This is organized because it's like, where are they getting the funding from this? Turns out it's her dad, George, that's behind it. But it's like, well, he's alive. It's like, so is that the real him? Is it a fake him like this Kiernan? Or is it the real him that faked his death because maybe he got contacted by some extraterrestrials and that's what this is all about? Maybe it's a thing of, hey, I am working with these people because I believe these people are the good guys. We're trying to do the right thing because if we let either government, any government officials, any bad people get this, then, because we don't know if they've necessarily done anything other than collecting the pieces of the debris. We don't know if they've killed and hurt people necessarily to do that, but obviously it's a full-blown organization with George maybe not necessarily at the top of it. He could just be being held hostage, and his experiences, like maybe someone took him and made it seem like he died. So, but now Maddox is like, yeah, don't tell Finola about this, which is like, it's her dad. He's like, you'll be able to handle it. So it's like Maddox has this thing of just kind of toughen up, be the soldier I need you to be, and keep this information. We can't let MI6 know about this either. So, but it also shows that obviously the CIA's got their own plans with this because we see them piecing the shit together, which are like, oh, that's stupid. You're stupid. Like, I get, once again, everyone's kind of out for themselves in this whole regard. So it's like, I mean, you get any government body. Obviously it's like the great things this thing could do, like what they'd be able to understand about the universe, sure, but it's also like, humans, they're just going to use it as a weapon, and you're just like, you have no idea what putting that together is going to do, but it seems like that's their mission. We don't know whether MI6 is doing the same thing, or maybe those are all the pieces they've collected, and it's like, oh, we're Unity, but secretly we're building this ship without telling anybody what's what. I don't know. Or maybe both, well, no, because why? Not unless Maddox was meeting up with other people. They are with MI6, but it's like, yeah, we're not letting them know about the George thing, but we're all working together to put the ship back together. I mean, maybe they're all in on it. Maybe that's not just kind of a secret, oh, I'm plotting over here doing my thing without letting anyone know, or maybe he got orders from higher up to do this. I'm just curious who's in the know about what, at least in that regard, so... like I said, a lot of questions, a lot of interesting setup. I'm curious to see what the rest of, because most of the stuff, at least from my memory, I'm not, because I have a terrible memory, from seeing the trailer like twice, most of the stuff we saw was mainly from the first episode. I'm sure there was probably other stuff from later parts of the season sprinkled in, but what I mainly remember is mainly everything that's from the first episode. So I think that's always a cool thing with the trailers. They mainly give you the first episode, sprinkled in with some other stuff, so it's still like a lot of the show is a mystery to me of like, what direction is going to go, like what can we expect from these pieces of debris, like what other kind of events are we going to have when they're, was it just that particular piece of debris that did that with the whole bringing the Kiernan back, or could, like I said, each one seems to be able to do something different. So like I said, I don't know whether it's certain, like the pieces of debris they're seeing are like specific parts of the ship that did specific things, or do certain conditions create what the pieces of debris are able to do. Like I said, hopefully we get some answers going forward, but I'm really interested to see where all this ultimately ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I'm going to talk about. So the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.